The Scottish Government's facing the prospect of defeat in Holyrood over the issue of mandatory testing for Primary 1 pupils. Their political opponents look set to unite behind a motion demanding that the assessments are scrapped. Liz Smith, Scottish Conservatives education spokesperson, spoke to us earlier in the programme.
I do listen to the Primary 1 specialists in this. They're the most important people in the whole debate. And they are telling us that their professional judgment can raise these issues. They can establish these things. They have a daily contact with many of the parents involved. And they feel that the big question for them is, are these tests informing them better about the progress of their young people? And far too many of them at the moment are saying this is not added value. That's my concern. Well,
the Education Secretary John Swinney is with us in the studio this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in. You spent a lot of yesterday trying to win round critics by demonstrating the tests. Did it achieve anything?
The assessments are very important, and what the presentation yesterday demonstrated to members of Parliament and to members of the media was the fact that the assessments are appropriate for 5-year-old children. They're set within the early level of the curriculum. And secondly, they provide the very highest quality of diagnostic information about the challenges that young people may face in their education. And that's valuable information for educators to consider and to plan the next stages in learning for young people as a consequence of them taking part in the assessment.
Except so many people disagree with you. You heard Liz Smith there saying that the experts that she had spoken to say that they don't add value. We know that the EIS is against, the teaching union is against the tests, and many parents saying that their children are being distressed by these assessments.
I accept there are different opinions about these assessments. You cite the Educational Institute of Scotland. In their survey that they carried out amongst their members, some of their members gave positive feedback about the value of these assessments. You talked about individual parents. Many parents say to me they had absolutely no idea their child had undertaken this assessment because they were neither up nor down as a consequence of doing what is fundamentally a computer game. And my 7-year-old son would play computer games every day of the week, every hour of the day, if I would allow him to do so, but I don't allow him to do it because these are set within a context that is appropriate for young children. So I think it's important that we recognise there is a debate to be had here. I accept that, and I'm listening very carefully to the feedback from individuals. That's why we've replenished a third of the questions in the assessments as we go into year 2. It's why we're setting up practitioner forums to enable practitioners to give us more feedback about the assessments. It's why we're ensuring that there is much more active feedback from learners themselves about the experience so that we can build on this as we entrench a really important part of our education system, which is improving the data about progress that young children make through our education system, which was a central demand of the OECD when they reviewed Scottish education.
Except teachers say, well, they know that already. They know the information they're getting from these assessments already. If you are a decent teacher and you care about your job, which I'm sure you would agree most teachers do, then they have this information. It's time consuming, it's time wasted.
Well, the time taken on average for the numeracy assessment is 22 minutes, 22 minutes out of a year. 27 minutes on average for literacy out of a year.
Well, many teachers is saying it's taking more than that for some reason to undertake these assessments.
On all the data, we've published all the data. On average, it's 22 minutes for the numeracy assessment and 27 minutes for the literacy assessment. Now, if you look at, of course I accept that many teachers will understand much of the information that's within the assessments. But if you look at Professor Sue Ellis, the Professor of Education at Strathclyde University's article in yesterday's Herald newspaper, Professor Ellis made the point that much of this data can be deduced by teachers, but some of it gets missed. And I don't want to run the risk that we miss important diagnostic information about children so that we can address those issues at the earliest possible opportunity. Because all the information I've looked at says, and our work on the attainment gap makes this point crystal clear, the earlier you can address the challenges that a young child faces in their education, the better in narrowing the attainment gap and enabling that child to fulfil their potential.
Does it have to be, though, primary one? And does this whole notion of assessment, does it not undermine your own stated policy of encouraging play-based learning?
No, because what we're assessing is whether young people have got, or children have got, a command of the early level of curriculum for excellence, which concludes at the end of primary one. And it's important that we assess whether young people have reached that stage so that we know what additional challenges have got to be addressed as they move through the first level of the curriculum. And of course, Scottish education at the early level is entrenched with an approach towards play-based learning. That is exactly what our guidance says should be the case. That's what I see when I go into primary schools around the country. So the play-based learning is being undertaken, but it's learning to make sure young people are acquiring fundamental skills that we have to be certain they have gained to enable them to progress in the education system.
Given that the main teaching union and the EIS is against these tests, and if the vote goes against you today in Holyrood, what will your response be?
Obviously, I'll consider any conclusion that Parliament comes up with, but I think it's important.
Would you change your mind like the Conservatives have?
Well, the Conservatives are playing politics here.
Well, they say they looked at the tests and they...
I'm sorry, Gillian, but last week the Conservatives were demanding in Parliament more data about schools, and today they're going to vote for less. In 2016, they pressed us to introduce P1 assessments, and now they've changed their mind. The Conservatives are simply playing politics here. And
although they say they've listened to the experts and they've taken a different view.
I'm sorry, Gillian. I'm listening to the Conservatives, and they have changed, they have adjusted their stance to play politics with children's education, and I think that is reprehensible.
What will you do if the vote goes against you today, though?
Obviously, I'll consider what Parliament comes up with as a conclusion of the debate today.
Because it's not just politicians. We talked about the EIS too, taking this view about P1 testing.
Well, of
P1
course,
assessments.
I engage heartily with the education system. I'll reflect on the conclusions of the debate today and obviously take any steps that I think are appropriate in the light of that decision. But
could that be scrapping those assessments?
Fundamentally, I think the argument is made by the advice that we've taken internationally that we need more data about the progression of young people through our education system. That was a key criticism of the OECD when they reviewed Scottish education in 2015. We've put in place standardised assessments to help to inform teacher judgment about the performance of young people. It's an essential building block of our education system, and that's what I'll argue with Parliament today.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in this morning. John Swinney, the Education Secretary.